The first time Commander Vaylor saw a station full of seasoned hunters part like water around a single unarmed human, he assumed it was fear of consequence. Reputation. Politics. Something bureaucratic and explainable. He was wrong, and it took him 3 days to understand why. Cathrasway Station sat at the convergence of 4 trade lanes, a rotating wheel of scavenged alloy and patched hull plating that had been added onto so many times nobody remembered its original blueprint. It served, among other things, as neutral ground for the Confederated Hunting Guild's 600 species worth of apex predators who had clawed, stung, or charmed their way to the top of their respective food chains, all gathered to trade trophies, swap routes, and occasionally settle disputes with claws bared. Vaylor, a Threnic warbear standing 2.5 meters at the shoulder with a security record longer than most species' written histories, had seen every kind of predator strut through his station. He'd broken up fights between Issac venomdrakes and Corvain packhunters. He'd mediated a territorial dispute that nearly ended in 3 dead Halvern silk spiders. He thought he understood predators. Then Mara Ellison walked off the Wandering Star with a duffel bag over one shoulder and nothing that looked like a weapon, and every single predator on the concourse stopped what it was doing. Not stopped to look. Stopped to move. A cluster of brachy-tusk hunters, 8-foot quadrupeds built like armored bulls with serrated horns, were arguing over docking fees near the Central Market. As Mara approached, they didn't even glance at her directly. They simply rearranged themselves, shoulders angling away, horns dipping low and submissive, clearing a path 3 meters wide without a word exchanged. A pair of Sethric climbing predators, normally territorial to a fault about elevated walkways, dropped down to the lower level entirely rather than share a corridor with her. Vaylor watched it happen 4 more times before he activated his calm. Security to Dock 7. I need a visitor profile on the human who just disembarked from the Wandering Star. The response took longer than expected. When it came, it was from Threll, his second-in-command, a Issac whose voice carried a hiss of something Vaylor hadn't heard from her in years. Commander. You should come see this yourself. By the time Vaylor reached the market concourse, Mara Ellison was sitting alone at a food stall, eating something out of a ration pouch with chopsticks, looking for all purposes like an unremarkable traveler taking a break. Average height. Lean build. Dark hair pulled back. Nothing about her registered as physically imposing by any metric his sensors could measure. And yet the entire surrounding area had emptied into a loose, respectful perimeter, the way a crowd parts around something dangerous without anyone announcing why. Vaylor approached directly. As station security chief, deference wasn't something he extended easily, and he didn't extend it now. He walked straight up to her table and sat down across from her, claws clicking against the metal bench. You're drawing a great deal of attention, he said. I'd like to know why. Mara looked up, unbothered, chopsticks pausing midway to her mouth. Funny. I was going to ask your guild members the same question. Everyone keeps staring at me like I walked in carrying a kill. That, Vaylor said slowly, may be closer to the truth than you realize. What's your profession, Ms. Ellison? Hunter, she said. Same as everyone else docking here, I'd guess. What do you hunt? She set down the chopsticks. For the first time, something flickered behind her eyes, not pride, not bravado, just a flat, professional recollection, like someone describing a job they'd done 10,000 times and stopped finding remarkable. Depends on the contract. Started out tracking apex invasives back on Earth before the Confederation found us. Things that ate apex predators for fun. Then I went where the work was. Such as? Such as, Mara said, things bigger than your brachy out there. Things that hunt in groups of 40 and still lose half the pack to me before they figure out I'm the wrong thing to chase. I don't do trophies, Commander. I do extermination contracts. Population control. The jobs nobody else wants because the targets don't play by predator rules, they don't flee, they don't bluff, they don't posture. I go in, I solve the problem, and I leave. Vaylor said nothing for a long moment, processing. You're telling me, he said finally, that every predator species on this station that has spent millennia perfecting dominance hierarchies took one look at you and recognized, instinctively, that you don't operate inside those hierarchies at all. I wouldn't know what they recognized, Mara said. I just know I get a lot of empty space wherever I go. Used to bother me. Now I just appreciate the legroom. Vaylor pulled the security footage that evening, replaying it frame by frame in his office, and what he found unsettled him more than he expected. It wasn't fear in the conventional sense. Fear made predators bristle, posture, threaten. Predators didn't flee from danger, not as a species-wide reflex. They assessed it, postured against it, occasionally fought it. What he was watching instead was something closer to what prey species did around predators. An unconscious recognition of category. A complete absence of challenge response. He pulled up the Brachy footage again. Their species was notorious for testing newcomers, especially smaller-bodied ones, with shoves and territorial posturing, pack animals establishing pecking order through low-stakes physical contact. Not one Brachy had so much as brushed against Mara's shoulder. They'd built a 3-meter perimeter around a single unarmed woman the way junior pack members built perimeters around a senior killer they had no intention of testing. He thought about something an old mentor had told him decades ago, when he was a young warbear cub still learning the hierarchy of his own species. You don't have to fight to be recognized as the strongest thing in the room. Sometimes the room just knows. He hadn't believed it back then. He was starting to now. The confirmation came 2 days later, when a dispute on the lower docks turned violent. A karate blood eel trader, 6 meters of segmented muscle and acid-tipped barbs, a species responsible for more guild violence than any other on the registry, had cornered a young Sethric over a stolen cargo manifest. Barbs flared, ready to deliver a lesson the Sethric wouldn't survive. Security was 4 minutes out. Mara Ellison was 40 feet away, buying replacement boots. She didn't run toward it dramatically. She didn't shout a warning. She simply set down the boots, walked over with the unhurried economy of someone closing a distance she'd closed 1,000 times before, and placed herself between the karate and the Sethric. The blood eel froze mid-strike. Every predator on that dock, and there were dozens, drawn by the commotion, watched the karate, 6 meters of apex venom killer, back down. Not from a threat display. Not from a weapon. From a human standing with empty hands and an expression that suggested this entire confrontation was beneath her notice. Walk away, Mara said. Quiet. Not a threat. A statement of fact, the way you'd tell a dog to get off the furniture. The karate walked away. When Vaylor arrived 90 seconds later, the dock was already returning to normal, the young Sethric shaking and grateful, and Mara was back at the boot vendor, examining the stitching on a left heel like nothing had happened. You could have been killed, Vaylor said. I wasn't, Mara replied, and it wasn't a coin flip. I've read 140 species of apex predator body language. That eel wasn't hunting. It was disciplining. Different posture, different intent, different opening. She held up the boots. These any good for vacuum-adjacent environments, you think? Vaylor looked at her, really looked, past the unremarkable frame and the quiet competence, and understood, finally, what his entire station of hunters had recognized in an instant on the dock 3 days ago. They weren't looking at a predator who'd climbed to the top of a hierarchy. They were looking at something the hierarchy itself had never accounted for. Something that had walked among monsters long enough and put down enough of them that every other monster's instincts simply rewrote the categories on contact: not competitor, not prey, not equal, apex, full stop, give way. They're rated for vacuum adjacent, Vaylor said. You'll want the insulated lining for the outer ring, though. Good, Mara said, paying for the boots. I've got a contract out there I need to finish. Vaylor didn't ask what kind of contract. He had a feeling he already knew, and a stronger feeling that whatever it was, it wouldn't be a problem for long.